Retro Warriors episode 292. Woo! As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Saturn, we have two housekeeping bullet
Two
points.
housekeepings?
It's the same as last week. We're on Twitch. Go watch us on Twitch. I should say our Twitch handle. It's Twitch.
Just search around. Maybe you'll find us. Maybe you won't.
It's like, it's like one of those ARGs. You gotta figure out where we are. One of those. It's twitch.tv/retro_warriors. We're on Twitch. Also, go listen to Cinema Rogues at cinemarogues.podbean.com. I was doing claps when I was saying at podbean.com. I don't know why I did that.
That's weird.
I just really wanted to drive it home.
Yeah, you got to drive that shit home.
My
this
week.
is the second episode of the night.
Can you tell? Oh yeah, you can tell which episode's the second one because Justin claps every syllable for the whole episode. I like Mother 3. It's a good game.
Pablo's going to be tracking the claps later, and he's going to be like, what the fuck was that guy doing?
What happened? I picked Yakuza Kiwami back up from last November.
Why is that?
29th. Because all the Yakuza games came to Xbox, right. And I just got a new Xbox, and I was like, I want to play Yakuza on my Xbox, and I went, oh, but I didn't finish Kiwami.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I can just not finish it. And then I was like, no, you need to start doing it right, Justin. Finish your damn games. So I picked Kiwami back up on
also,
PC.
I had started playing by that point, I think, right?
You had.
Yeah.
And you had started catching up to where I was. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I cannot let Saturn beat Kiwami before I do.
Because you had started months ago.
I started sprinting to the end of the game, and then I realized that somehow you got to where you were, and then you're like, oh yeah, now I've not progressed for a week.
Yeah.
Because you're just doing side quests.
Right. Well, that's because I got to the point where all the side quests opened up, and I was like, oh, I can do all these other things now.
And I got through the end of Kiwami, and I have to say, man, what a story. Holy shit.
I just got past a car chase before we started recording.
Man, you're in the good part.
Yeah, it got pretty
I know where you are.
nutsy.
It gets insane, and then it does this thing where in the middle of the game, the story starts to ramp up and get real nuts.
Yeah.
And then you're like, all right, it's going to get nuts, and then you know how stories work.
Yeah.
It gets nuts, and then it dies down,
Right.
and then, there's a thing. It just keeps like one-upping itself all the way to the end.
Nice.
And then the end keeps one-upping itself, and then the end of the end keeps one-upping
Nice.
itself, and then the next game just starts continuing with the one-upping from where it left off.
Nice.
So I did finish Kiwami at about 25 or 27 hours.
Nice.
And that's 24% completion.
Yeah, I'm at 35 hours. No, I'm at more than that now. I'm probably closer to 38 hours, but I'm at 60% completion, and I'm in chapter 10 now, I think.
Because really, I did some of the side quests and mini games, but a lot of them were just they're just kind of slow, and I'd rather be punching guys and doing the story. I do love that a game that is so filled with side quests and mini games, it didn't punish me at all for not doing them.
Right.
I still got to unlock almost all my abilities in the game. I still, you don't feel like you're missing anything. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciated that because when I reached the point where the story started really going off, I was like, I can't do anything else. I have to know what happens. And I finished it, and it was. This never happens. Yeah. My wife and my kid were sitting on the couch watching the end of the game for the last hour and a half. And we're all just sitting there like stuff happens and we're like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like as a family, my kid has no idea what's happening. Right. It's all in Japanese and she can't read. She has no fucking clue. And we're watching the last hour and a half of Kiwami, and I'm on the couch just going, oh my God. Like, just panicking.
Yeah.
It's pandemonium in my house.
Yeah, I did not expect to enjoy the game at all because it's a brawler.
It really is a brawler.
Yeah, it's definitely a brawler, which is not my kind of game. And it's just laden with side quests and activities, which is normally not my thing. Normally I want story and I don't want distractions and I don't want to have to make the decision of where to go and when. but it does that more Japanese style thing where it's like, no, this is your objective, but you can still do those other things.
Right.
And it lays it out for you very clearly. But more importantly, I went into it worried that I was going to have the same problem that I have with GTA, where all of the protagonists are completely irredeemable, and I hate them all.
Very
and
much
I don't
not
want
that.
them.
Yeah.
And instead, Kiryu, the main character, is very much a JRPG protagonist in that he has an unbreakable level of morals, which the Yakuza is known for. And also, he is completely incapable of turning down the dumbest requests from any individual in the world.
Will you oil wrestle me? Okay.
Yeah, he is one rescue a stray cat quest away from being a JRPG protagonist, and I wouldn't be surprised if that quest shows up at the beginning of the second game.
And on the way to rescue that cat, he'll stab 50 people in the street to death.
He'll beat them to death with motorcycles, and then he will bring that cat back to the little girl.
So I started Kiwami 2.
Mm-hmm.
I finished Kiwami 1. Highly recommend Kiwami 1.
It's a blast.
A plus story, A minus gameplay all the way to the end. Fantastic game. It is a blast. It's on Game Pass.
Some of the optional stuff is a little frustratingly difficult at times.
Yeah.
But it is completely optional too.
Which is why I skipped most of it. Kiwami 2, I'm several hours into it. It is already, from the first 10 minutes, every single aspect of it was better. The combat was better. It was better delivered. It was more efficient. It was faster. The world is bigger. Everything happens quicker. Everything is streamlined. Everything is simultaneously simpler, more efficient, and bigger.
Nice.
I'm
looking forward to it.
Great. I'm a little trepidatious about Yakuza 3 because for people that don't know, Kiwami 1 and 2 are remakes of Yakuza 1 and 2.
Right.
The third Yakuza game did not get the full remake thing.
Because it was originally on PS3.
Right, it was a PS3 game. They just remastered it. So up-res everything, and then it's still basically the same PS3 game.
Right.
So I worry that since Kiwami 1 and 2 are technically later games than 3, 3 is going to feel dated, and I've been told that 3, it does feel a little dated right after Kiwami 2.
Right.
But I'm still going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
I also I'm full on in Yakuza mode. I've already ordered Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Already got my
coming
copy.
in the mail.
It's sitting on the phone shelf.
And I'm on record because we always joke like Justin hates video game stories. And I've said before, I don't. I hate bad stories. And a lot of video games have bad stories. And I don't mind a bad story that I can ignore, but I don't want you to shove your bad story down my throat, And Yakuza is it's like 15 90s crime thrillers all rolled into one.
So that was the other thing that I was worried about it is I was never a big fan of heavy action movies, and I was never ever a big fan of kung fu movies. And I was worried that it was going to fall on those tropes so hard. And even when it does fall on those tropes, it's got its tongue so firmly planted in its cheek that it's ridiculous, and that I can enjoy how silly it is while everybody is being murdered in front of me.
I love that Kiryu seems to always acknowledge how stupid all the stuff is. He's like, this is dumb. Of course I'll do it.
There was a side quest I did last night. I think it was last night where he does this interview with this young lady. And she's like, I'm doing an interview with a newspaper, and we're looking for DILFs. And he's like, what? And she's like, older bad boys, they're in right now. And then it has the, text in parenthesis that's supposed to be his inner monologue. And he says, well, that sounds really stupid, but I'll see if I can help him.
As you were sending screenshots of that to the modern chat, I had gone to a photo shoot, and a man named Poison, who was totally nude and hairless in a Speedo, had gone from taking my picture to having a fist fight with me.
Perfect.
These are serious games. I'm convinced that Sega has two buildings, and in one building they're like, you're making a stupid brawler, it's nuts, and then in the other building they tell them they're writing a serious crime thriller. And they never tell the two buildings about each other, and then at the end they have a third building where they stitch them two together. It's the weirdest, like peanut butter and tuna fish combination, and it works so good.
It is pretty great.
So it's
I am surprised by how
been a
much I'm
blast.
enjoying it.
I honestly I am too, because again I normally don't go in for heavy story, heavy
Right.
side. And Kiwami too, I'm doing every side quest, everything I can
Nice.
find. Mostly because everything is just more immediate and faster,
Right.
and there Kiwami 1 is pretty heavy on like, oh, you're walking over here. Okay, we're gonna cut to a scene
Yeah.
of you walking over here, and then we're gonna cut here. And we're gonna cut to a scene over here of him going up these stairs.
Right.
Like 2 is just much more seamless. I think is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I almost feel bad that I haven't been following this series the whole time, and that I have not been, collecting for it and everything. But I am glad that I finally found it, thanks to Game Pass, really.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna barrel through it and see if eventually I can get to Like a Dragon.
I think both of us, we were like, we want to play Like a Dragon, and even though it's a disconnected story, it feels like we should play an earlier
Exactly.
Yakuza, and that's because that's
Right.
where I was when I started playing last November, and that's where we both ended up. Where it's like we want to play Like a Dragon, and now it's at a point where I'm like, I didn't give a shit about Like a Dragon.
Right?
Kiwami 2 is great.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I'm just enjoying this game so much that eventually I'll get there. But fuck it, this is fun.
But now we've just gushed about Yakuza for
Yeah.
10 minutes on an inevitably long episode.
Right.
I also
Well, it was
hooked up my Xbox 360. It still is a thing. I don't know why. I hooked it up and I was like, cool.
Perfect.
But yeah, that's my week. It's just been consumed by Yakuza, talking about Yakuza in the Discord,
Yeah.
and telling my wife, she'll just be sitting there and I'll be like, so he was the 5th chairman of the such and such, and then the Omi clan came in and they went over there and they killed this person and this guy, and she's just like, I don't know any. She was on the couch the other night and she was like, I don't even know what these organizations are. I don't know anything. Which is, and I was like, that's great. Okay, but just be quiet and listen, because I have to explain it to someone.
See, that's what I was looking for throughout all of the Trails series, was someone to just sit there and let me explain what Ouroboros was to them, and that person was never there, and it was very frustrating.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway, it's been Yakuza all day,
Yeah.
every day for me.
yeah, that's pretty much been the last several days for me. Before that, though, I did go on a bit of a Game Pass binge, both because of the new Series X and also because just before I got my Series X, they had just finished one of those things where every achievement you get counts towards rewards points.
Yes.
Up to 10,000. And
Now that I'm tracking my Microsoft rewards and my gamer score, I can see this month I'm like way ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
And then last month you have like this insane gamer score
right.
spike.
Yeah, that's because I was like the whole month I was like, I'll just get whatever points I get. If I happen to
Right.
get close to the 10,000, then I happen to get it, and that'll be great, but I don't expect it. And then suddenly when there was 3 days left to get points, I was like, I have to get points right now. And so I started looking up online, like, what is the fastest games to get gamer score? And the first one that somebody recommended was this game called Fractured Minds, which legit is a game that you can finish and get all 1,000 points in less than 2 hours. And it is a game about depression. And
Oh no.
yeah, and it's basically a walking simulator about depression.
Oh
And-
God. This
and-
sounds like 2 hours of literal torture.
No, because the thing
Is it good?
It is pretty good. The person who wrote it is someone who has depression, but they didn't just want to make it look all sad and dreary. So
Right.
they depicted their depression as this 8-foot tall smiley face with like a long flowing creepy black cloak.
Right.
And it does an excellent job of portraying exactly how depression feels. As someone who has suffered from depression for decades, it is very accurate. So if you're in that mood, don't play this. But if you are not and you kind of want to see what it might be like, then
Right.
yeah, it's
if you want an objective look at
Right.
something that hopefully you're not struggling
Yes.
with.
And if you are struggling, then maybe it'll at least let you know that you're not alone. So that's something.
True. Also true.
And then I tried The Gardens Between, which was another one somebody said you can finish real quick, and I did in like 3.5 hours. It is a puzzle game about time manipulation, and it was neat. And I immediately forgot most of it when I was done. So it was, a thing. If it wasn't on Game Pass, I don't know that I would have bought it. But on Game Pass, it's neat, worth checking out.
Yeah.
I did play through all of Donut County, which was not listed as one of the games that are super fast.
My wife picked that up. It's you play a hole
Yeah.
that eats things.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It's fun.
And the writing in it. Your wife was not a fan of the writing. I was. I thought it was hilarious.
She liked being the hole so
Yeah.
much that she's like, I just want to go play as the hole. I don't want to do all this dumb crap. Like, let me go do more hole puzzles.
Yeah. The story is dumb and hilarious. The main premise is that a series of raccoons have moved into town and they are destroying the town so that they can turn everything into trash so that they can have more trash.
Yes.
And they all speak like they're 17-year-old girls in a text message. It's the dumbest
Wonderful.
shit. Anyway, but it is fun. It has that Katamari vibe as far as just dumb, weird gameplay.
It does. It does feel a lot like that.
I did play some of Cyber Shadow, which is that new Ninja Gaiden-esque game that Yacht Club published. I don't remember who the developer is, though, and they definitely deserve credit for it, though. It definitely feels very Ninja Gaiden. I will say that. Which
I did not feel like it felt Ninja Gaiden-y.
Really?
No,
Huh.
it felt it. Granted, I didn't play long enough to get many of the abilities, but it feels like Ninja Gaiden at like 20% speed.
Yeah.
When you start.
Slow Ninja Gaiden. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
My fear when I first started the Messenger was that it would just be Ninja Gaiden, and I was very happy that it was not. That it was more robust than that. And this, I kind of had a hope in the back of my mind that it would be kind of like the Messenger, and it is not. And so I am not enjoying it nearly as much as I did the Messenger. So I may not finish it. I did dabble in some Final Fantasy VIII and Dragon Quest XI just to get some quick achievements on Game Pass.
I saw that in the notes and I was like, oh, I could get some quick chivos out of the JRPGs that I've played.
They are not quick achievements. That's what I remembered, is that JRPGs are long games.
Right, but like Final Fantasy VII has fast forward on it, doesn't it?
That's true. So does Final Fantasy VIII. That is true.
And 9, if 9 is 9 on there?
Yeah,
on
9
Game
is
Pass?
also on there.
Yeah, there you go. It's got fast forward.
But I also insist on completing all things in every game when I play them.
Oh, that's don't do that.
So that doesn't help.
Quit.
And then also the Medium, which is one of the very few Xbox Series X and S exclusive games so far. It might be the only exclusive one so far.
My Microsoft Rewards really wants me to play the Medium, and I'm like,
you don't want it.
Nah, dog.
It is a psychological horror. It plays.
My life is a psychological horror. I don't need that.
Gameplay wise, it has the fixed camera angles and 3D movement that makes it reminiscent of like a PS2 era survival horror, like the old Silent Hill games, where it's not tank controls, but it is fixed cameras. However, you don't encounter any enemies for at least 2 to 3 hours.
That seems like it would make me more scared.
So it does a great job with the tension build up and release cycle, and I really appreciate that. That's something that I constantly criticize survival horror games about, is that they are terrible about that. They just throw enemies at you, or they throw jump scares at you, or whatever.
Right.
But this does an excellent job of just building it up, and when it finally throws an enemy at you, it's incredibly tense and intense for a good like 15-20 minutes there.
Yeah.
So I am appreciating it, though I did put it down to go back to Yakuza. I need to go back to it eventually, but Yakuza is just really good. So I have not yet.
It's too good. Well, now that we've gushed about Yakuza for like 20 minutes, let's fire through some news. First up, iOS and Android port of Ys 6, releasing this spring in Southeast Asia, will be a free-to-play MMO.
Why? Ys 6 is a perfectly good single-player game. What are they doing? Why?
How do they make it? What?
I don't know. That's
not a port. It's a new game.
I know. What are they doing?
Frank Cifaldi of the Video Game History Foundation reveals an unreleased baseball game in the style of NBA Jam and NFL Blitz that Midway had made for arcades in the mid-90s.
Neat.
Xbox Live Arcade GoldenEye 007 remake has leaked to the internet. Have you played this?
I have not yet. I downloaded the beta, but I have not touched it yet.
I got it in Xenia and loaded it up. Works great with the controller. Runs great on my computer. I'm so upset they didn't release this. It's real good.
Nice.
It's real good.
Well, the rights issues were just a fucking mess, man.
Yeah, and I have heard that the Bond rights holders didn't like GoldenEye in the first place.
Right.
They had a lot of problems with how Bond was represented there,
Right.
which, I mean, they're wrong, but yeah. But it's out there. You can play it. It's on archive.org. Please go download it because it's fun, and they're going to take it down, I think.
I'm sure they will.
It's really good. It's got a feature we've talked about in many remakes before that we love, where you can push the right bumper and it switches back to the old graphics.
Nice.
In case you're playing it and you go, I don't know, I mean, the N64 game looked pretty good, and then you can push that button and go, oh no, and turn it back on.
What am I doing?
It's good. It does keep a lot of that the kind of like heavy auto aim that GoldenEye had.
Yeah.
Even though it has modern controls, I played on an Xbox One controller and it played fine.
Nice.
But it does still, it keeps that GoldenEye feel without feeling like a modern shooter, if that makes sense.
I'll have to check it out.
Nintendo Switch officially outsells the 3DS family of consoles. So let's see, 3DS was out for like 10 years, and the Switch has been out for half that.
3DS came out in what, 2012, I think?
Yeah.
2012 or 2013, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
Dang.
a lot.
Right?
Sonic Prime animated series announced.
It's for Netflix.
No other details on that, but it's a thing.
Yeah.
Konami licenses Silent Hill assets to yet another horror-themed multiplayer game. What was the last one? It was like
Dead by Daylight was the last one.
Dead by Daylight. Yes.
And I don't even remember. I think this one's called like Murder by Numbers or some dumb bullshit. I'm so fucking Konami. Fucking Konami.
PlayStation Studios' first Xbox game, MLB The Show 2021, will release in April.
And we determined in the chat that the show was, I don't remember what we determined.
It's baseball.
It's baseball. No, the MLB part is baseball.
Yeah. Oh, the show is what they call they call baseball.
We even had people explain this to us. Shit.
I was confused because I was like, isn't all sports technically a show? What makes this one the show? Someone explained that there are many smaller leagues in baseball.
Yeah, I do remember that now. Yeah.
And I don't understand why the MLB, the largest league, doesn't simply devour the smaller leagues. Google shutting down internal game development studios for Stadia. Says they plan on focusing on making the best platform for third-party developers, and it's definitely not a thing that they're just going to let languish away for years before silently pulling the plug.
And they had just recently hired that woman that had worked on God of War games, and she was laid off as part of this. And it's been hilarious to watch the Stadia community through this. Well, first of all, for the last couple of years, it's been hilarious to watch the Stadia community. But the day that this was announced, they were all like, oh, so you guys are shutting it down soon, and we've all wasted our time and our money, and you've just abused us. And then within a day, they had completely turned it around to, we didn't really want that lady. I mean, she hadn't really done anything good. And, it's more important that they bring in more third parties. And I think they're going to buy Capcom eventually.
I don't... Stadia is so fucked. Yeah. At this point, Google is like a parody of itself.
Yes.
I don't know how they keep going into the office every day and not just being like, what are we fucking doing?
Now, I still think that Google is going to continue to invest in video games over the coming years. And I think they're going to become a bigger player in coming years as games get more expensive to produce. But Stadia ain't it. I don't, unless they really change some stuff, I don't see it lasting much longer.
Yeah. Nintendo is they're financially replacing. They're finally replacing its multiplayer server infrastructure that was developed 2 decades ago.
Now, how much of this did you read?
Almost none.
Okay, so they only purchased this server system that is 2 decades old a little over 10 years ago. Prior to that, they were using an even older multiplayer infrastructure. So somebody broke this down, and they discovered that when playing Splatoon 2, the netcode for Splatoon 2, because it uses this ancient server structure, checks to determine if you're running it on Windows 98. Which you're not, by the way.
So what you're saying is Win98 port of Splatoon 2 incoming?
Any day now. Any day.
EA announces it's reviving its college football game series.
Yay.
You could play it. It's Sports
Ball.
Which is a show, not the show, as we have learned.
Thanks
to our wonderful Discord sports fans.
Thank you, sports fans.
CD Projekt Red adds mod support to Cyberpunk in a patch so that maybe someone else could fix the game. And they later tell people to be cautious as those mods are corrupting users' save data or harming their PCs.
Perfect.
Embracer Group, parent company of THQ Nordic and Deep Silver, acquires Gearbox Software for $1.3 billion.
Oof.
Aren't Gearbox, they're the Borderlands people.
Correct. They're the Borderlands
Aren't they?
people. And
Yeah.
as Randy Pitchford, I believe, is the guy at Gearbox.
I always, for some reason, want to say that Gearbox made Gears of War because it
They
says
do not.
Gear. They both say Gear. It makes sense.
No, that's Epic.
So-
Epic made Gearbox.
Yeah, no, yeah. Hobbyist working on Sega Saturn Core for Mister is taking donations via Patreon. We don't have their name written down, so just
shit.
Google it.
My bad.
You'll find it while you're searching for our Twitch handle. Just be like,
It's
go
on our
online.
Discord. Just go to our Discord, which we're also not going to tell you how to find.
And one of the people on the Discord, Nick, was talking to me about it because he has a Mister, and he was like, previously everyone has said a Saturn Core is not feasible on the Mister, so it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Speaking of Sega Saturn, the Terra Onion has lowered the price for the Super SD System 3, which is their TurboGrafx
Yes. Yes.
Attachment
It's
and
the optical drive emulator for the TurboGrafx.
emulator. From 232 euros to $278 or 208 numbers. They've lowered it from $278 to $218. You put multiple denominations in
I
there.
did. I
Saturn.
put
You
euros
confused me.
and dollars in there, and that was apparently enough to confuse you. My bad.
232 to 182 euros, which is 278 to 218
Yes.
American
And freedom
dollary
bucks.
dues. And the Terra Onion, there are also people that do the mode,
Correct.
which is the Saturn ODE.
It also works for Dreamcast.
Yes. Nintendo reportedly canceled Zelda and Star Fox Netflix shows after rumors leaked to the press. What?
Yeah.
Of course, rumors leaked to the press. It's Netflix.
Yeah. And Nintendo got their panties in a bunch, and were very upset that people would know that they might be developing TV shows.
Good God. Sega and Lego announced a Sonic Mania themed set. So once again, Nintendo and Sega being buddy-buddy under some other weird umbrella.
Yeah.
ZeniMax co-founder Robert A. Altman.
Oh, sorry. Apparently forgot to.
has passed.
Yeah, he
has passed away.
Apparently forgot to finish typing that sentence.
Yeah, I was gonna say did something, and then I rememred that he passed
He
away. Is
tragically
what he
passed,
did.
yeah.
So that's
sad
very
to hear.
unfortunate to
Right.
hear. Elite Dangerous players. I love this. Elite Dangerous players are reporting that they're being tricked and stranded in the middle of space by other players and then forced into labor camps. In Elite Dangerous,
Yeah.
people are farming new players, stranding them in space, and making them do labor for them.
You know, they say that sometimes video games are great ways to simulate real world events.
Yeah.
And here we go. We're simulating the worst of humanity again.
Hackers discover the original sound samples from Super Mario World's soundtrack and restore the original music for a fancy HD Super Mario World soundtrack. It's really cool sounding.
It's really neat.
Kind of weird.
I still prefer the original, and it might just be out of having heard the original a million times. But,
Yeah.
But it is neat. It is neat to hear how it sounds.
Yeah. And without further ado, let's talk Mother 3 Part 2. Hey,
Yes.
that rhymed. I made a little song.
Did you?
This is... I'll be so incredulous of my songs.
No, I was just going to make you question if you actually rhymed or not again to see if you
I did
remember
for a
what a
second.
rhyme means.
This week we're talking about the story. So, you know, like major earth-shattering spoilers for Mother 3. If you want to play this game, I highly recommend you do not have the story spoiled because it's mostly story. Most
Yeah.
of the game is story.
Yeah, and there's such emotion attached to that story too,
Mhm.
that while it might not ruin it if it is spoiled for you, it definitely feels, it hits you in the feels if you're coming into all of it for the first time.
The game is like, hey, it's also a JRPG, but mostly it's a play in 8 parts that Itoi is putting on for you.
Yes.
That really is what it feels like when you're playing.
Which is
it.
Itoi's thing. Is
Right.
just telling stories and bass fishing. That's what he does.
Basic premise of the game. Tazmily Village is a small town on the isolated Nowhere Islands with no outside world to interact with when suddenly a foreign army appears from an unknown location and brings changes to Tazmily, including the introduction of technologies unfamiliar to the native inhabitants.
That was the
Saturn,
most
if you wanna-
spoiler-free premise that I could possibly come up with.
That's pretty generic.
Yeah.
That's the only way to make it more generic would be to say a thing happens to a place.
There's a place and things happen there. Scene.
Saturn, do you want to start introducing our characters
Yeah.
as we are introduced to them in the game?
So we start with Lucas, who is immediately described as a crybaby. He is-
Although you never see him cry.
no, you don't. You don't actually. Like, it is implied. No, you do see him cry once in chapter 1.
Okay.
Yeah. But other than that, no, it's more heavily implied than it is ever shown.
Right.
And he is our protagonist. So because he is a JRPG protagonist, he is left mostly blank slate.
He's our protagonist eventually.
Yes, eventually he is our protagonist in chapter 5.
Yeah.
And also his family is there, and he is also the one that you named at the beginning. So if you're going into this from Mother 1 and 2, and this is the character that you're immediately told to name, and then all these other characters, you assume, oh, this is my party of characters, because that's how the other games did it. So you have this family, you name them all, it must be your party. So the other family members, you have Flint, Lucas's father, who is kind of a stoic, quiet guy. He has the appearance of like a generic TV cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
And he seems to be the type who is willing to risk himself for others who are in danger.
And early in chapter 1, you play as him, and it feels like he's going to be your main character for a little bit.
Yeah, briefly, it's like, oh, no, this is the main character. And
then he's not.
Yeah, he is only playable in chapter 1. And then you also have Hinawa, who is Lucas's mother. Who is a portrayed as loving mother of Lucas and his twin brother Klaus, and also Alex's daughter and Flint's wife, and that's pretty much all we know about Hinawa. That's her entire character. She makes some omelets. That's about it. And then you have Klaus, who's the twin brother. And he goes missing pretty early on, and you spend the whole rest of the game trying to find him. But again, they don't describe him much personality wise. He is more fearless than Lucas, and that's all you know.
Yeah, they really make it sound like he's the braver of the two, and then he's gone. We'll see him later.
Yeah. Then you have Boney, who is Flint's dog, or maybe Lucas's dog, or maybe the family dog. He is the dog.
Yep.
He is one of our permanent playable party members once we get to having a permanent playable party. And,
over halfway in.
Yes. He uses items, and he does a great job of dressing like a dog-like dude.
Mm-hmm.
It does remarkably well on his hind legs. We have Duster, who is a thief in his mid-20s who walks with a limp, and graphically they do a phenomenal job of portraying his limp. I didn't notice it until this playthrough, but it's really well done.
We were talking in the topic discussion channel, and someone brought it up.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about other characters, and they were like, yeah, and he walks with a limp in the game. And I was like, he does?
Yeah.
And then I went and squinted at my tiny Game Boy screen, and I was like, oh, he does.
Yeah. I was playing on a big screen TV, so it's a little more obvious. And it is implied that he learned everything that he knows about thievery from his father, Wes. He cannot use Sai, so he uses thief tools, as they describe them. And though Wes and Duster are called thieves, they never steal anything because everyone in Tazmily Village just gives things to everybody else. Nobody really cares.
It's this little utopian village is kind of how it's presented.
Where they have no sense of money, and just everybody takes whatever they need, and everybody provides whatever others need. Itoi did say in an interview that Duster, as well as other characters we'll get to in a moment, were designed for a specific reason. He said that Duster was designed older and with a bad leg to show players that there's nothing wrong with making friends with people who may be different, which is a very Itoi thing to say.
Yeah.
Then you have Kumatora. She is referred to as tomboyish. She is the princess of Asohe Castle, I guess.
Yeah, she's the only royal family member of this castle that she apparently is the princess of.
She is the only member of the royal family of this abandoned castle full of ghosts
that no one lives in.
No.
That we know. I kept waiting to meet the king or the rest of what does the castle rule over it? Nothing. It's just there.
Just there's a castle. She's the princess. Go. She's the fist fighter in the group. She has low physical attack power, but she does get some pretty strong psi abilities later in. So she's good there. Then you have Salsa, who is a monkey who has a shock collar on.
I hate that stupid monkey.
Justin hates the stupid monkey.
Oh, I hate the monkey.
He has such little impact on the plot, and yet they focus on him for an entire chapter.
Salsa and Samba can both just get fucked.
Yeah. So Salsa is the monkey. And yeah, he's got a shock collar on. He performs for Facade, who we'll get to in a minute. Then we have the Magypsies, which I would say is probably the primary reason the game has not been localized.
Most definitely.
So
has to be.
As the game describes it, the Magypsies are 7 human-resembling beings who live solely to guard the 7 needles, which we'll talk about in a bit. The Magypsies are named after the 7 modular scales in music theory. Their names are Ionia, Aeolia, Doria, Phrygia, Lydia, Mixolydia, and Locria. And so the Magypsies all have masculine bodies and facial hair. I believe they all have facial hair or 5 o'clock shadow, one or the other.
Right. They've all got at least stubble.
Right. They all dress in feminine clothing. When I went through my most recent playthrough, it seems that they all refer to themselves and each other with she, her pronouns.
I saw some feminine pronouns used. I also saw some language that seemed to avoid pronouns intentionally,
right,
as well.
So from what I found from the discussion of the localization, the Japanese version doesn't seem to use any gendered pronouns when it refers to them.
Yeah,
it uses all non-gendered pronouns, and they are not described as human in the game. But if they were, it would appear that they are representative of trans women in current terminology, in modern parlance. Right. And it could have been seen as progressive for its time to have this group of 7 seemingly trans characters. And they are generally represented as very positive, very almost sacred characters in the story's
very
plot.
Much so.
But then they are also used for comic relief on several occasions in kind of questionable ways, at least with modern eyes.
I was honestly, I was concerned early on because playing a Japanese game from the 2000s, when I run into any character like this, I'm always worried about representation.
Right.
Like, man, they're going to start making jokes about the Magypsies, and it's they do it little. Early on, there are 2 jokes that really are that made me nervous because they show up and I'm like, hey, and we talked in the topic discussion channel with multiple people that were like, yeah, they seem like positive characters in the game. Immediately after your first encounter with them, Alec, Lucas's grandfather, kind of mocks them in the cave. He doesn't say anything specific, but he's kind of making fun of the way they talk.
Yes.
And when they talk, because it's just text, they have little hearts next to everything, which would theoretically imply a feminine affectation or voice.
Yeah, or that maybe they're talking in a sing-songy way or something like that.
Also that, yes. Yeah. And so that made me a little uneasy. And then later on in the game, there's another joke where one of the Magypsies is alone with Lucas in a hot spring.
Yes. And it is implied that he pushes Lucas under the water for a few moments.
Right. It's basically this joke where this Magypsy's like, okay, turn around, Lucas, and close your eyes, and then the screen goes black, and I can't remember the exact text, but the joke is, oh ho ho, look at this Magypsy alone with a little boy in a hot spring. Wonder what they did. And that like,
that's a really uncomfortable bit.
it just verged right on the kind of hateful line
Right.
of comedy where
However,
I was like,
that's also the scene where she teaches Lucas psi abilities.
True. I mean, the reason I say got up against
Right.
that line is because obviously that's not what happened, but that's the joke they're
Yes.
trying to make, is like wink, wink, nudge, nudge,
Right.
ha ha. But then from then on in the game, they're very positively
Yeah.
represented.
There
They're
are
very important characters.
Yeah, there are a couple of times where the game kind of tosses up pronouns a little bit at times, and I don't know if that's just the localization or if it's possibly that the original script did that as well, because it's only other characters referring to the Magypsies.
Right. They seem to not be sure how to refer to them.
Yeah, and so there is a little bit of confusion and mix up, but I don't. Personally, anyway, obviously you and I are not the best judges of this, but personally
Right.
looking at it, it doesn't look like it's in any kind of negative or hateful way. And it seems to actually treat it with some level of respect, especially for Japan in that era.
Yeah. By the end, I really liked them as characters.
Oh, yeah.
I thought they were very good. I thought they were very well represented. They're
Right.
some of the more emotionally deep characters
Yeah.
within the game. And we'll talk about why.
Right. And they
but-
are generally depicted as friendly and magnanimous. There, a couple of them do mention that they don't really care about humans because their lives are so short, but that's as close to negative as at least 6 of the 7 of them ever get.
Yeah. And I really, I can see why Nintendo wouldn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole,
Yes.
because they don't seem to know how to handle this kind of stuff, representation like this very well.
Right.
But I don't think the way they're depicted in the game overall is problematic at all.
No, and it for the
by the
most
end
part,
of
it is very positive. And honestly, I understand, because I'm a little afraid of touching this in this episode.
Yeah.
Because you and I are, again, just, cis white
We're
dudes.
both cis white men.
Yeah.
Like it's out of our wheelhouse,
Right.
But I really, for people that play the game and might be nervous about their representation, there were a couple little jokes early on, and then it just seems to forget about it,
Right.
and then they're very positively represented.
After those,
the rest of the game.
after those early jokes, it seems to treat them with respect and dignity, and again, it keeps them on an almost sacred level after that.
Yeah, for sure.
So, then we get to Facade, who was he's a commander in the Pig Mask Army, and he is the one who introduced the Happy Boxes to Tazmeli Village, which is basically televisions, and it basically brainwashes the entire town into loving technology and loving the Pig Mask Army, and he's also the one who was torturing Salsa, the monkey, earlier, and at the end of the game, is when we get into the heavy spoiler territory.
Yeah.
You encounter him several times, you battle him, and then eventually, after the last time you fought him, some time later, you encounter his home in the Empire Porky Building and discover that Facade, is Locria, the final Magypsy, the one that you were never able to find. And unlike the other 6 Magypsies, Facade shows no feminine traits throughout the game. He only refers to himself with masculine terminology. But you still find his razor and lipstick just like you do the other 6 Magypsies. So it is implied that maybe he has been hiding himself as a not Magypsy this whole time. So that just adds extra awkwardness there.
Well, there's some interesting depth there, too, because it does kind of make me wonder about, this is a character that obviously we would assume that Magypsies are naturally, appear masculine and feminine to us by our human perceptions, because, again, they're very much not human characters.
Right.
And this is one of the Magypsies that has chosen to present in a different way.
Yeah.
Now, he ends up being a very evil character throughout the game.
Right.
But it is interesting from a representation standpoint to see someone that, even in this kind of, I don't want to call it backward or upside down, but it's like the reverse.
Yeah.
The game still represents him the way he wants to be represented.
Right.
And it's interesting.
It almost begs the question of the only Magypsy that doesn't appear like the other Magypsies happens to be the one that is evil.
Yeah.
And is it because he gave up whatever made him a Magypsy that made him evil? So,
and we never know.
No, they never answer that question, but it does lead to some possible deeper context there.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on from that, you have the Masked Man, who is an enemy that shows up pretty late in the game. I think into Chapter 5 or Chapter 6 is when you first encounter the Masked
very
Man.
briefly.
And the game makes no effort at all to hide the Masked Man's identity from you.
Saturn, I didn't realize that the Masked Man was Klaus until the end of the fucking game.
Never mind. So apparently the game does a brilliant job.
I was like, what? Like I had a whole...
Never mind.
I kept early, so this is kind of, we're gonna cover the plot, and so this is kind of jumping ahead. But it's all this shit over Hinawa. She dies early on in the game, and then like you see Klaus appear to die, and no one fucking mentions that ever.
Yeah. Well, that's because they never found any remains, so they thought he was still alive out there trying to find Hinawa.
He was 20 feet away. He was right there.
Yeah, but it was on the other side of the cliff where they couldn't see it.
It never, I was like, I wonder. I remember like halfway through, I was like, I wonder if the Masked Man is Klaus. I was like, nah, that's dumb. Fucking, of course. I also didn't know until the end of the game, the final battle, that they were twins.
Oh, yeah, they say that at the beginning.
And I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, like at the very beginning, they refer to, and also anytime you save there, at their house, at Flint's house, the save file lists the location as the twins' house.
Why would I read the save file? Come on.
There are several points in the game where they do refer to them as the twins.
Whatever.
But that requires reading, so, you know.
It does. I didn't read any of it.
Also, we have the doorknob, who appears at several points as comic relief. It falls off of Flint's door at the very beginning of the game and then just constantly keeps showing up throughout the game. Up until the very final dungeon, the doorknob shows up one last time. It's just so dumb, and I love it. Then you have Leader and all of the other residents of Tazmily, which I'm really just going to cover when we get to the story later.
Right, which is fine.
We have some returning characters from the previous games. We have Dr. Andonuts, who is Jeff Andonut's father, from Earthbound.
From Earthbound.
And he has been put to work making the chimeras on behalf of the Pig Mask Army. You have the Mr. Saturn, who are still here. And they are much less important to the story than they were in Earthbound. But one Mr. Saturn does fix up the Courage badge and turn it into the Franklin badge. And
which
also,
is a pretty big
a story bit.
Magical MacGuffin later on.
Which also appeared in the previous two games. So it carries on its plot significance. And also they can now ladder and become a stack of Mr. Saturn that you can climb on. And that's amazing. And I love it. Then you have Porky, who previously was called Pokey in Earthbound, and is now called Porky. And Nintendo has also adopted that now in Smash Brothers. They call him Porky.
Well, obviously, now that Mother 3 is out, Pokey doesn't work because it's all pig-based enemies.
Yes.
You know, so
Porky is the head of the Pig Mask Army and the game's primary antagonist. You can find Nessa's yo-yo in Porky's room in Thunder Tower. And there are some other mementos and references to Ness and his friends in the Empire Porky building, but otherwise none of the other Earthbound characters show up.
And they never, like, I don't feel like you would have missed out on anything had you not played Earthbound, because the game doesn't really acknowledge that Porky is from Earthbound.
Right, yeah. There's hints at the end for people who have played Earthbound.
Right. But I don't think you'd miss anything if you hadn't.
But if you have played it, holy shit, that last area just pulls at your fucking heartstrings with the nostalgia and the memories of the previous game.
Let's talk chapters. You start off in the prologue, which is Lucas and his family visiting Alec in Alec's cabin in the mountains, just having a good old time.
For some reason, Alec is the only person who doesn't live in Tazmily.
Yeah, that's true. He lives way outside of Tazmily.
Yeah, he lives way the fuck out in the mountains. Like, there's a couple people in the forest, but the forest borders Tazmily. And then there's fucking Alec just out in the middle of nowhere for some reason.
And this part of the game introduces you to basic combat. You see a mole cricket that you fight is your tutorial battle that pops up later in the game. You meet the Dragos, who are big T-Rex dragon type creatures who are friendly at this point.
Yes, and awesome.
And it just kind of introduces you to everything.
Yeah, it introduces you to save frogs and sparrows and all the basic mechanics.
Also, you missed a character in your character description.
Oh,
and you actually missed my favorite character in the whole game,
which is
Rope Snake.
Oh, that's true. I did mean to mention him too. I actually had him written in, I thought, at one point.
And you have to mention him as an important character because Rope Snake tells you that he's one of the main characters halfway through the game.
Yeah, Rope Snake, who is Duster's sidekick after his adventure in Osohe Castle.
Yep.
I believe he buys him from some ghosts. And
he's both a snake and a rope.
That's true.
And they don't really ever touch on the fact that technically all snakes are ropes, as taught to us by Indiana Jones in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
And really, he's just a snake. He just identifies as a rope snake.
Right.
Yes.
Which is fine.
Right.
And we accept
that's fine.
him.
He's allowed to.
Chapter 1. The night of the funeral, Sunshine Forest catches fire. Flint learns of the Pigmask army and discovers the terrible news of what happened to his family. So in this section, you start off playing as Flint.
Yes.
You play him throughout Chapter 1. Duster and Boney are there for a little bit.
Yeah.
And basically, the forest catches fire, and he's trying to run around and save people.
Yeah.
And is also hoping that his family come back from Alec's house in the mountains very soon. And
instead...
after the fire, you learn that the boys are back. Lucas and Klaus make it, but Hinowa was attacked by the previously peaceful Dragos, and she's dead.
Well, you don't even know definitively that she was attacked by a Drago. The way that it phrases it to you, and it like completely took me off guard when it happens. The dude says, "I have good news and bad news for you. The good news is I found this awesome Drago fang that I can turn into a weapon for you. The bad news is it was pierced through your wife's heart." And that's both the best and most horrible phrasing.
And
it really sets the tone for the writing for the entire rest of the game.
Yeah, and Hinowa's death really sets off the chain of events that lead to the rest of the game. Right. I felt nothing at her death. Yeah. I know this is one of the early gut punch moments where you're introduced to this nice family, and then all of a sudden the mother is killed.
Yeah, it devastated me. I was not prepared for it.
From the beginning of the game, I was like, "Oh, she gonna die." She had the least interesting character design. She had the least. She wrote a letter early on to Flint.
Yeah.
In Tazmily Village, that's just like, "Hey, the boys are having fun. Blah 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 blah. Story setting, window dressing. Love, Hinowa." And she writes it, and 10 minutes later, they make you read it.
Yeah.
And you're like, I just saw her write this 10 minutes ago, and you make me watch the whole cutscene again. It was that moment that I was like, oh, because she's going to die.
See, I didn't think that at all because she's one of the named characters. And I had played Earthbound. I was like, oh, she's going to be a primary party member, but I'm going to hate her, and she's going to be really boring.
No, I was like, they're going to kill her because they're trying to make her seem extra emotionally deep because they don't have a chance to do so later by making me read her same fucking letter 2 times in the span of 15 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't get it at all, and so I was taken off guard. And obviously, Flint loses his shit when it happens too. Like he grabs a burning 2x4 and starts swinging it at
beating
people.
Some people. Yeah.
And then Klaus gets all emotionally charged up and abandons the funeral and runs into the mountains to find his mother, who is dead, and we all know she is dead. So I don't know what the fuck Klaus is doing.
Yeah. But, so they're reeling from Hinowa's death. The fire is eventually put out, and everyone's back in Tazmily Village.
Yeah.
Barring Hinowa, she's dead.
Yeah. And then Klaus runs off. And
Klaus runs off.
And then Flint goes to try to find Klaus. And
so you're playing the game and you're like, all right, I'm probably going to play as Lucas, but maybe also Flint. And I don't know about Klaus. We'll see what happens. And then all of a sudden the game's like, now you're Duster.
Well, first of all, Flint and Alec meet they meet all the Magypsies. And right after that, the player learns that Klaus is dead.
Yes.
But the characters have no idea.
Right. So in the end of the Chapter 1 section, Flint does find the Drago.
Yeah. Which has been turned into a chimera at this point.
Yeah, and this is the first big bad guy chimera that you find, and you're seeing Pigmask army ephemera along the way. For the most part, they're running away from
They
you.
haven't fully invaded yet, but they are present.
And yeah, so now all of a sudden you fight the Drago and you kill it with its own fang.
Right.
And I was more upset about the Drago dying because of the baby Drago.
Right?
I was like, fuck Hinawa, that poor
Yeah,
Drago. It doesn't
seriously.
have where's the rest of its family? And then they pan over to Klaus, presumably laying dead behind a mountain.
Right.
But he'll never show up again. Definitely, he's definitely not the Masked Man.
That's funny. Hinawa's death completely took me off guard. But the Masked Man, I was immediately like, oh, that's Klaus. I'm on
No,
this.
not even at all. Then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you're Duster now.
Yeah.
And
also
you
the
have
story is completely unrelated now.
Yeah, they're like, you need to go to the castle to steal this important thing. This is what Wes is telling Duster.
Right.
You'll know it when you see it.
He does.
Duster goes there and fucking steals a spittoon.
Yeah, because Duster.
And then Wes is like, you're an idiot.
Yeah, the whole rest of the game, Wes is just like, you're a fucking moron.
Yeah. But eventually we meet Kumatora, who teams up with Duster for the last section of Osahe Castle. And they find the Egg of Enlightenment.
Right.
That I'll let you tell us about because I don't even remember what the egg does anymore.
We'll get to it in chapter 8.
And then Alec, Wes, and Kumatora all are subjected to a boss fight.
Yeah.
And that's basically chapter 2.
Yeah, it's basically just running around with ghosts in a castle.
At this point, you're a few hours in and you're like, who the fuck is my party? What is happening? Where are we going?
So it's very much going the Dragon Quest IV route, where it's a bunch of separate, unrelated chapters that introduce different characters before eventually getting to the main party.
Which is fine for the first hour or two of a game.
Oh, for Dragon Quest IV, it's the first 15 hours.
That's not fine.
I love it. I'm fine with it. Whatever.
And then we hit chapter 3, which, as you'll know, is the worst chapter. Facade, Facade is really the main bad guy in the game. You have the Masked Man who shows up later, and there are and Porky that shows up later, but really Facade is the enemy.
He's the primary antagonist throughout.
Yeah,
and really this chapter is the worst chapter for different reasons. You hate it for the character, and
well, I hate it for mostly being very bad.
Yeah, the gameplay is not great in this chapter.
So
it's hard. And I also hate this chapter because emotionally it's just really draining because you're just watching this monkey getting tortured over and over again.
Yeah. So Facade shows up in Tazmily Village. He's selling happy boxes, which are TVs, and this is the beginning of them introducing technology that eventually corrupts and warps the once peaceful Tazmily Village.
Right.
And he brings his trained monkey, Salsa, who you are.
Yes.
And Salsa is level 1.
And also a monkey. And
yeah.
And he can't use equipment or anything because he's a fucking monkey. And and it's just so hard.
And so Facade just tortures this monkey as he's peddling these happy boxes throughout this entire section of the game.
He's got a shock collar on him, and he just constantly electrocutes this monkey. And the monkey's girlfriend is being held by the pig army.
Yeah.
So he can't just escape or they'll kill his girlfriend. So it's just, it's devastating and also bad gameplay. So it doesn't help at all.
No, it's emotionally draining. It's very hard. It's I'd say it's the only portion of the game that you have to grind in.
Yes.
Because you start at level 1.
Yeah.
And it's also frustrating coming from, you've got Duster and Kumatora in the previous chapter, and you're kind of feeling like, all right, they feel like I kind of got this party thing going. I got a couple of them, and then they're like, now you're a level 1 monkey. You're like, excuse me? How long is this chapter? I don't know, 2 hours. Why? What? You're level 1. Are all the enemies level 1?
No.
They're normal level.
And
what?
And for the first part of that area, Facade is with you and he will damage enemies. But sometimes he doesn't, and sometimes he damages you.
So, it's infuriating to play.
Yeah.
To introduce Salsa, who does almost nothing.
But you can collect dung balls in the desert and bring them to a dung beetle who will give you items. That's something, right?
That's great.
Yeah.
Chapter 4. Suddenly, it's 3 years later.
Yeah, and you're Lucas.
Yep. Lucas and Boney leave to go find Flint. They meet Kumatora and Duster at Club Titty Boo. And this is chapter 4, is where the game first introduces money, DP. Prior to this point, there's nothing to buy because in Tazmily Village, if you need food or weapons or an item, they just give it to you. You walk in the shop and they go, take whatever you want, you know. And there have been, they introduce money as a concept in the village earlier in the game. But this is the first time that the player has access to money.
Right, yeah. Facade had referenced money when he was peddling happy boxes.
Right.
And there was a brief moment in Duster's chapter where somebody says they got money from Facade, but they don't know what to do with it. But now suddenly everybody has money because it's been 3 years, and it is a currency-based economy.
Right.
And the whole town has built up from where it was before. There are shops now. There are roads. The frog is in a car now. Everything has built up from where it was before. There's a train that runs to a factory. Technology has evolved very rapidly in Tazmily.
Yeah.
And also there are chimeras everywhere too.
You head to Club Titty-Boo with Lucas and Boney. You meet Kumatora. She recognizes you and lets you into the club.
Yeah, because at the end of Salsa's chapter, Lucas saves Salsa and Kumatora with the help of the Dragos. So that's where Kumatora knows Lucas from.
And so then you get into Club Titty-Boo and you meet the band.
Yes. DCMC.
DCMC.
Who have released an album.
And it's kind of similar to the band in Earthbound.
Yeah, the Runaway Friend.
And you realize that the bassist is Duster.
Wearing an afro wig.
Yeah. And you play a song, you meet Duster. Eventually, Duster leaves the band.
Well, yeah, once you've beat that fucking bass in the attic.
Yeah, you do have to go through a really shittily tough version of the game.
Oh my God, that
portion of the game.
That is a rough dungeon.
So yeah, well, you're in the club and she's like, well, let's go see Duster. Just go through the attic to get there. And then you go up there and there's a fucking bass blocking you that kicks your ass.
Yeah. Fortunately, since this was my second run through the game, I knew to grind a shit ton before I ever went to Club Titty-Boo. So I was a good level. I handled it pretty well.
You reunite with Duster. Duster leaves his band to go with Lucas Kumatora. And Boney, and you have your party.
I do want to mention the most important part of this chapter is that they don't let dogs in the club, so Boney has to dress as a man, and he's just wearing a ball cap and a t-shirt and is otherwise a dog, and he's just standing on his hind legs, and they keep referring to him as a dog-like dude, and people keep saying that you smell like a kid and a dog, and I love that. I just fucking love that whole running gag.
Other than the dungeon, Chapter 4 is pretty fun. The whole Titty-Boo section is full of a lot of jokes. Yeah. It's a good section of the game.
Plus, you get to say the word Titty-Boo a lot, and that's great.
True. And really, it's the first time you have your whole party.
Yeah.
You don't know if this is going to be your whole party throughout the game because thus far you haven't had a static party.
Right.
And that takes us into Chapter 5, which is the Tower of Thunder.
Yeah, which is almost a direct continuation of the last chapter, which is new.
So determined to take down the Pigmask army that's corrupting their world, Lucas and friends all end up at the Tower of Thunder.
Yeah.
And this is the section where you go through the factory.
Yes.
You show up, and now that I know they're twins and that Klaus is the masked man, it makes so much more sense. Because at the time, it made no sense.
Yeah, because everybody keeps mistaking Lucas for the commander.
Right. So there's this big tower.
The masked man is the commander.
Yeah, you're trying to get the Tower of Thunder, which is the base of operations for the Pigmask army that's corrupting everything. And you have an inkling that the Tower of Thunder is what's shooting the lightning bolts into Tazmily Village.
Well, also because the Egg of Enlightenment is over there. And Duster has recovered his memories, and he is trying to go back to where he had buried it. And the thing that he had buried it in wakes up and runs to the tower.
Right. They have these big clay golems working in this factory that you have to go through to get at the tower. And you show up, and they're like, they think Lucas is their commander.
Right.
And
so they just let you in.
Again, now it makes a lot more sense.
Yes, there were a lot of hints along the way.
And you go through the Tower of Thunder up to the top where you fight Facade. No, you don't even fight Facade, do you?
No, you fight a robot. You fight Porky's maid.
Yes.
Which I think Porky's maid is optional. I don't think you have to fight her. But then
I think you
get
can
to
go around the back of the thing.
yeah, and
In
then
the top of the tower.
and then at the very top of the tower, the fuel regulator, some component of the tower wakes up and attacks you.
Right. You get up to the top, and suddenly the tower is basically exploding.
Yeah.
In Facade, you don't fight him, but he slips on one of his own banana peels and falls off the building.
Yes.
But thankfully, the rope snake is here to save you and your party from the explosion. The rope snake,
true.
the most important character in the game.
Yes.
The rope snake grabs onto what is it's just what is it's one of the
One of the-
Pigmask,
Yeah, it's the helicopter.
ships okay, yeah. So he grabs onto a helicopter.
Yeah.
And you fly away, not to safety, but a little ways later, and then he drops you.
Yeah, because his jaw gave out because it was really hard to hold on to that rail of the helicopter. So he tried his best, though.
At this point in the game, I assumed Facade was dead. That was him leaving the game. He slipped on a banana peel and fell off a building.
Yeah.
And then we get Chapter 6,
Yeah, so
which is about a minute long.
Yeah, it's about 2 to 3 minutes long.
It's Lucas having a weird near-death experience in a field of flowers. He sees his mom for a second. It's emotional, and then it's gone.
I think he sees Klaus for a second, too, doesn't he?
I don't know.
I
Does
don't
he?
remember.
I did that one on stream.
Yeah, I skipped that chapter.
Yeah.
It's so boring.
And so then you wake up in Chapter 7, and
Yes.
Chapter 7 is where
The meat of
the
the game
game-
is. Yeah.
the game part of the game starts.
Yeah.
Suddenly, Lucas is tasked by the Magypsies with pulling out 7 needles that keep a dark dragon sealed beneath Nowhere Islands. And the masked man is trying to revive him. So only you're the chosen one. You have to pull these needles out and save the island.
Well, the way they phrase it is whoever pulls out the needles, their wishes are pushed onto the dark dragon. And they don't know the wishes of this masked man, but they know that Lucas is a good kid. And only
Yes.
people who can use PK Love, or whatever you end up calling that spell, can pull the needles. And for some reason, only Lucas and the masked man can do that.
I just now realized that it's called PK Love, and the reason the guide calls it your special PK
Mhm.
is because it asks you what your favorite thing is, and
Yes.
I said don't care. So because I always do default names
Right,
and stuff
same here.
on games that I play for the show because I don't want to be calling them the wrong thing
Right.
in the show because I've been calling them that for 30 hours.
Right.
And I could have named it like butts or farts
Yes,
or something this
absolutely.
whole time.
Yeah.
Now I'm upset.
I've seen plenty of playthroughs where people called it butts or farts or something.
So all of a sudden, this very weird play in multiple parts is like, oh, now it's a video game. There's 7 magical MacGuffins and there's a dragon sleeping. You got to stop it.
Yeah.
It's like the game remembered it was trying to be a video game.
It's like Ichwi finally remembered that he was supposed to have a plot and not just a bunch of stage dressing.
So then the rest of the game is you just going and pulling the next 6 needles.
Now, you also learn at this point that anytime one of these needles is pulled, the corresponding Magypsy that was guarding it dies. Like she
Right.
just fades into nothingness essentially as soon as the needle is pulled, which is kind of sad. But every one of them tells you not to be sad about it because all
Right.
of them are like, well, this is my purpose. This was what my life was for, and I have finally fulfilled it. And thank you so much for letting me finally see this fulfillment.
And this is where the Magypsies, I really do like them as characters in the
Yeah.
game because they get to talk. I mean, every one of them except for Facade,
Yeah.
Logria, the hidden Magypsy.
Right.
You stand there and effectively kill them and watch them die.
Right. And if you don't
And-
kill them, then the masked man kills them and you still
Right.
watch them die.
And seeing, because they talk to you while they're fading away, and
Yeah.
all of them are accepting of their fate.
Right.
And it's interesting that they're not really super sad scenes.
No. And also
Um,
you get to see the after effects of it too, because many of them have things going on in their homes. Like the one of them
Right.
found a member of the Pigmask army that was dying and was
Yeah,
nursing
and
him back
revived
to
him.
health.
That was Doria,
I
wasn't
believe,
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after Doria dies, the guy that was in the Pigmask army says, "I'm still your enemy, but I owe Doria, so I'm gonna stay here and take care of her rabbits."
Yeah.
And it's just you seeing the outcome of these magical deaths really kind of hammers it home a little bit.
Yeah. So each of these Magypsies has you going through, or each of the needles that you have to talk to the Magypsies to find, has you going through a different area. You have the Chimera Lab, which is where Dr. Andonance is making all of the chimeras, and you have a big chase scene with a
the
big
ultimate
scary
chimera
that kills you in one hit.
Yeah,
and
I love
Salsa
that
and
whole
Samba are there, and I just wish it would eat them. You get to climb up a snowy mountaintop. That's where Doria is. Where you fight Yetis along the way.
Right.
You have Saturn Valley, which you'll be going through a couple of times.
Yeah, that's where the Mr. Saturns are. And also
you have
where Duster is, because you got all split up when you fell off the rope snake.
You have a volcano to get a needle, which is the first time you really fight Facade.
Yeah.
He shows back up. He's got trumpets connected to his face now.
Yeah. The greatest part is he can no longer talk, so he has an interpreter. And so the little interpreter robot comes back and says, Facade has been reborn and made more powerful. He has horns now. And so you think that like he's grown horns on his head or something, and he shows up and he's replaced his mouth and nose with trumpets.
Yes.
And it's I love that bit.
The volcano section in that Facade fight is really tough.
Oh, yeah.
New Facade is what he's referred to as. But the volcano and the snowy mountaintop are pretty standard JRPG fare.
Right.
It's go through an area, fight the new enemies, fight the boss, get the magical MacGuffin, move on. Then you have the underwater area, which you have limited breath. So a lot of it is you running around between these different oxygen machines. Yeah. But the thing is, in the game, the machines underwater with which you receive oxygen are mermaids with giant kissy lips.
They're mermen.
That breathe the oxygen into your body and make everyone blush.
Yes. It is another awkward joke that they felt the need to squeeze in there.
And it is never explained why they are mermen.
No.
Why they're calling them... They never even refer to them as beings. They're only called oxygen machines.
And you can encounter another one in the final dungeon.
A centaur.
Yeah. Yeah. And you encounter him in the final dungeon, and he talks to you and says, do you want some more oxygen for old time's sake?
Yeah.
And you still blush.
Said yes. Yeah. It's very weird.
But Duster doesn't blush.
Does he not?
Nope.
Weird.
Boney does, not Duster.
I didn't hate the underwater section so much.
I did. Because
I was following the guide, and the guide really is like, go exactly here, go exactly there.
If you map out your path exactly, it's fine. But if you don't, you're constantly going to end up back on the fucking beach.
You have Tain Island.
Yeah, Tana Island is that's special.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
I like Tain.
So that's the area where you take psychedelic mushrooms.
Oh boy. It's so you show up, you eat these magic mushrooms, and then you're like fighting people and they're turning into monsters and stuff, and you get all the way to the end, and there's a big boss battle with what appear to be 3 Diglets. But along the way, you meet the Magypsy there, and they cure you of your mushroomness.
Yeah.
And when you go back through Tane Island, you see that it's a big fucking trash heap. And my favorite part is the hot spring halfway through that you rested in. You go back through, and it's like this toxic like sewer dump.
Did you use it when you were still tripping?
Yeah.
So if you use it when you're tripping, Boney won't go in. He refuses.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, he whimpers at you and sits outside and doesn't heal up like the rest of the party does.
Yeah.
He refuses to go in there and just whimpers at you the whole time. And then when you come back when you're healed, you see why he refused to go in there.
Right.
Also, anytime that you talk to any of the imposters, Boney barks at them because he can either smell it or whatever. He does dog things. Or maybe he's just not affected by whatever psychedelic is in the mushrooms, and he's a dog and just eats trash. But it's great, that whole segment. Boney is the only one unaffected. So if you listen to him, he'll growl and bark at things and give you ideas of what should be going on and isn't. Also, that area throws some like really weird and dark shit at you. Like my favorite one is there's mailboxes all over the island that you can open that for some reason tell you things. And one of them, it says, Lucas opened the mailbox and there was nothing inside. Nothing upon nothing poured endlessly out of the mailbox. And I just fucking love that. That's so great.
There's one that you open and it just starts screaming at you.
Yeah, one screams at you. One of them, Lucas, is inside the mailbox looking back at Lucas.
Yeah. And so these really are, like you alluded to in the previous episode, these are the Dragon Quest style slice of life, location-based adventures of the game.
Yeah.
And it does feel very Dragon Questy. Go to this location. These are the new things here. Someone gets captured. This thing happens. You meet this character. They help you. You pull the magical MacGuffin and move on to the next zone.
Right.
And eventually you end up at Chupi Chupioi Temple.
Yes. And technically, in this chapter, you can do a lot of these areas in different orders, too.
Right. Because, again, this is where the game opens up.
But it is recommended that you go to the temple last, because it's friggin' hard.
Yeah. And I don't remember much about the temple.
It's pretty forgettable. But that is where when you leave.
Oh, no, wait. Yeah, no, I just remember it as you were talking. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, after you pull the final temple, after you pull that final needle from the temple, that's when a limousine shows up to take you to New Pork Island.
Yeah, so you pull all of these magical MacGuffins. You got one left, and suddenly a limousine shows up, takes you to New Pork City.
Yeah, and which is where Lucas only pulled 3 of the needles. The Masked Man pulled 3 of the needles, so it's a tie.
So they're tied. Whoever pulls the last one. Well, the game actually never tells you what's going to happen if Lucas pulls all the needles.
The Dark Dragon wakes up, and they imply that the Nowhere Islands will be destroyed along with the world when the Dark Dragon wakes up.
If an evil person pulls most of the needles.
Right. But the wishes of whoever pulls the needles passes on to the dragon, and if that person doesn't want the world destroyed, then presumably the dragon won't destroy it, but we don't know.
They never really actually say.
No, they never say that.
They don't. So you pull these 6 needles, you end up in New Pork City, which is where the mythical Porky and his pig mask army are holed up, and all of Tazmily Village is there. They've moved to New Pork City.
And the thing is, throughout chapters 6 and 7, or not 6 and 7, 5 and 7, anytime you go back to Tazmily, there are less people there and more people talking about wanting to move to New Pork City. To the point to where at the end of chapter 7, it's pretty much desolate in Tazmily. Everyone has moved away. The only people left are a couple of tourists who are talking about what a backwoods city it is.
Right. And along the way, you also saw Tazmily getting, again, progressively filled with technology and ideas like television and currency and things. And it all culminates in this, like, really gaudy... intentionally over the top gaudy city of New Pork City.
It almost looks like a cartoony version of a cyberpunk town.
Yeah. And it's funny because like along the way in the limousine, if you look at any of the items, nothing works.
No, it's all fake.
And when you get to New Pork City, like everything's shitty.
Yes.
All the food is shitty. All the stuff. It's like it looks real glitzy.
Yeah.
But it's and this does feel like the kind of underlying message of the game, you know. But yeah, they're really driving home the whole thing. Like the simple life is the good life, and we should be happy with what we have, and so on. In simpler ideas and some, you know.
Well, also on top of that, there also eventually once you meet Porky, it makes it very clear that Porky still has the mind of a child, and so all of this is a child's perception of what a fancy big city should be. So he doesn't have the proper infrastructure to actually make things work. It's just
burger joints and toys everywhere,
right? And an amusement park and a giant building and shit like that.
Yeah. And so you're going through this city. Eventually, Boney runs off, and you go to save him through the sewer. Mm-hmm. And you fight Facade for the final time.
Well, before you fight him, you meet Leader, who...
Oh, I flipped him in my head. I thought it was Facade and then Leader. You're right. It's you go through the sewer halfway through, you meet Leader, and then on the way out, it's Facade. Right. So yeah, you meet Leader. Yeah, and this is literally...
Leader was completely silent the entire game. He just rang the bell during the fire and otherwise stood there until the technology showed up and he vanished.
Yeah.
And he's like 4 times taller than all the other characters.
This is where I have some problems with the story of Mother 3.
What?
So far, up to Chapter 7, it had no fucking idea what it was doing.
Yeah.
Chapter 7 happens and it goes, oh, let's cram the whole video game part of the video game in here. And then Chapter 8 happens and they're like, we'll just dictate the whole story to you.
Yeah, let's just give you all the backstory that we could have given you along the way.
Yeah, and I'm like, why wasn't Chapter 7 the whole game and the story from Chapter 8 laid over top of each section as I went through it like
Right.
that? Granted, that would have been a more traditional game, and maybe
Right.
Toei was like, no, I don't want a traditional game. But I feel like it.
From
don't
what
know.
I gathered, it feels like Itoi wanted the whole backstory to be a surprise, and it is, I guess, but it's not
Well,
like
I mean, definitely is because it's fucking weird.
right. But it's not like, oh, I should have seen that coming. It's how the fuck could I have seen that coming? So it's a weird kind of surprise, but it is definitely an Itoi kind of thing.
Let's step through what Leader tells you.
Yeah.
First up, the world of Mother 3 is also the world of Mother 1 and 2.
Right.
Humanity had brought itself to the brink of extinction, though the cause isn't spelled out. We
No.
just assume something awful. The final survivors of the old world headed toward the Nowhere Islands on a white ship. The Nowhere Islands were for some reason protected because the Dark Dragon was there, and
Right.
so they were unaffected by what happened to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
The only native inhabitants of the Nowhere Islands were the Magypsies, who were protecting the Needles, which again awakened the Dark Dragon.
Right.
Oh, so hey, Castle had been there and abandoned, so now we know why Kumatora was the only person that lived in the castle, presumably.
Right.
And the survivors of the White Ship decided to form new identities on the Nowhere Islands to create a more peaceful society to rebuild humanity.
Right.
So everyone's previous memories were erased,
Yes.
except for Leader, so that he could watch over them.
Yeah.
And everyone was given new backstories. So everyone in Tazmily Village was assigned that personality.
Right.
And Leader says that he wanted them to be more filled out, real personalities, but he basically was like, we were doing it last minute,
Yeah.
so we didn't know.
Yeah. We ran out of time, so we were just like, fuck it. Tazmili's been here. Go.
Kumatora was an infant whose parents died before she boarded the White Ship. She was left in the care of the Magypsies and was given the identity of a princess.
Yeah. Because
And-
sure.
And then Porky is there.
Yeah.
And Porky has been apparently traveling through time after the events of Earthbound,
Right.
discovered the Nowhere Islands and heard of the Dark Dragon, and wanted to use that power to kill everyone who doesn't like him.
Because Porky.
So he brings in people from across time and space to help him build New Pork City and the Pigmask Army to take over and presumably destroy the Nowhere Islands.
Yeah. So he wants to waken the Dark Dragon. And because the Masked Man is basically dead, it is just operating on Porky's behalf. So it is presumed that if the Masked Man pulls the final needle, then Porky's wish will be fulfilled and everyone will die. But
Right.
we don't know that. We don't know if there's still something in the Masked Man that would counteract that. So really the game only brought additional questions to the table at this point.
Right. At this point, it's dumped all this story on you, and you're like, I didn't feel like you knew what you were doing before, and now you've just doubled down. Where you're like, well, I don't know. Like, for example, how is Porky? How is Porky traveling through time?
Oh, because
did they
of,
ever explain?
because of Gygus. Mother 2, Gygus was able to go around through time, and Porky followed him with that weird spider machine at the end of Mother 2.
Okay,
And-
I didn't remember the ending of Mother
okay,
2.
yeah. There was already some time travel shenanigans involved.
I did remember that stuff. I just didn't remember what Porky did.
Yeah.
So you have the final dungeon of the game now. You climb to the 100th floor of Empire Pork Building. He puts
Several
you through a bunch of
100th floors.
fake 100th floors until eventually you find Porky,
Yep.
who's grown old and sick.
Yes.
And we learned that, again, like Saturn said, he's still the child that he was in some weird Akira-style child old person body.
He's just waiting for Tetsuo to show up any minute now.
And then you fight a bunch of fake Robo Porkies. The entire town shows up to support you, and it feels like the end of the game.
Right.
You defeat 7 or 8 Robo Porkies and
Yeah.
some chimeras, and then
DCMC
all of-
shows up, and
yeah, it's a big finale, and then all of a sudden, you think you've won, and literally the floor drops out, and you're in a new dungeon.
well, yeah, because you still have to find the final needle, and you're told,
Yes.
oh, well, this is where the final needle is, so good luck getting there. And then it's Porky, so he probably said spankety spankety.
Yeah. So you go through this final dungeon.
Uh-huh.
You eventually find Porky in his weird spider bed robot thing
Yes.
on the way to get the final needle.
Right.
And as you get to where you're about to defeat him,
Uh-huh.
he gets in a device that was invented by Dr. Andonuts
And the Mr. Saturns.
and the Mr. Saturns to keep him absolutely safe.
Yes.
And so in the middle of the battle, he retreats into his absolutely safe capsule,
Yes.
which is his Deus Ex Machina to escape from you killing him. And Dr. Andonuts is...
That's
Go
the
ahead.
saddest part of the game right there.
It is, and it really is the most weird existential part of the game. Dr. Andonuts is conveniently there to explain, yes, the absolutely safe capsule will keep Porky safe.
And alive.
Absolutely. From everything outside of the capsule. The only problem is he can never leave it.
Yes.
There is no way for him to ever be harmed or die or leave the capsule for all eternity.
Yes. He is in there for eternity. He cannot die, not from age, not from injury. He is always safe in that capsule, but he can never leave or interact with anyone outside of it.
So at this point, you're thinking, surely I'm just going to pull this needle, but we haven't seen the Masked Man.
Right.
Flint meets up with your party. You face off with the Masked Man, and he kills everybody except for Lucas with a lightning bolt because Lucas, has
the Franklin
his,
badge.
which reflects lightning.
Right. Yeah, that's
Um,
it's been in all of the Mother games so far, and its
Yeah.
plot relevance has only increased over time.
and so then we have this final battle with the Masked Man, which is not really a battle so much as you just guarding and healing yourself
Right.
because Lucas will not attack the Masked Man
No.
because he finds out that it's Klaus.
Yeah, he won't attack him for quite some time.
And so you're going through this battle where basically what it is you guarding and healing,
Mhm.
and there's a cutscene that keeps interrupting.
Yeah.
That is Hinawa trying to reach Lucas. Eventually, Flint jumps in there and is critically wounded.
Right.
And eventually, Klaus finally remembers who he is.
Yeah, he kind of wakes up a little bit.
And he fires one final lightning bolt at Lucas that he knows will reflect and kill him.
Yes.
And
Which
then
that's
you have
fucked
to
up.
then you have to lay there and watch Klaus die, and it's slow. It's like, Lucas, I'm so sorry. I'm glad we could be here at the end. And you're like, oh my God, I have healing magic. I'll heal you. You'll be fine.
Boney has like 8 secret herbs right now.
I got a big pile of life noodles. We will resurrect you. I wouldn't be worried at all. And it is a long death.
Yeah, and then a long credit sequence. And,
Yes.
And then it gets to a fake out end screen.
Well, hold on, because
Okay,
you
sorry.
pull the final
right,
needle.
right. You pull the needle.
Lucas dies, you pull the final needle, and it's this thing where it's like, yeah, you're here and you won, but like Klaus is dead, your mom is dead,
Yeah.
Porky's gone, the whole town is fucked. Like, how do you go back from this? And the answer is the game doesn't know.
Yeah, so it shows some credits, and then it gets to a fake out end screen.
Hold on, I
Oh.
still want to go back.
Oh,
because
shit.
you pull the needle and the dragon wakes up.
Yeah,
And it shows a cutscene of everything like on fire in
Oh, that's
tornadoes
true,
and
yeah.
exploding.
yeah, it does show
So
everything
you're like-
get destroyed.
You're like, oh, the dragon woke up and destroyed everything. It shows it's a very long, very well animated for a
Yeah.
GBA game cutscene where it shows all this shit.
Well, they did
And you're
say previously that the dragon would wake up and destroy and rebuild everything in the image of the person that pulls the needles.
So then, yes, you have the credit sequence, which
Mhm.
has every character that's appeared in the game,
Yeah.
including the most important character, Rope Snake. And it has every it's very animated. Like everyone's animated and running around. It's a very
Right.
cute
Very
sequence. And
similar
you're like,
to
oh,
Earthbound, but with more animation.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, what happened? You know, it's this like Final Fantasy VII ending where you're like, whoa. And at the end, it shows you the end.
with a question
And
mark.
then you realize you can move the end around.
Yeah. Well, actually,
you
no,
start moving-
the end is just overlaid over the screen. You're moving a character that you can't see.
And all of a sudden you start bumping into stuff. The whole screen is black. You
Yeah.
can see nothing.
Yeah.
And you start bumping into things, and it's the characters from Tazmily Village.
Uh-huh.
And they're all reassuring you that they're fine.
Yep.
And they're thanking you personally, the player, for saving them.
Yeah.
And they're going at great length to assure you that, oh, we're totally fine. Everything's fine. we're only going to show you a black screen, but we promise it's all fine. Wasn't it a great game? Thank you so much for playing and saving us.
And
great job.
Maybe you should revisit us someday, but don't worry about us right now because we're all good. Everything's good here. Don't worry about this.
And then the game just fucking ends.
Yeah.
You don't know what happened. You don't see, there's no resolution.
No.
There's no anything. It's just like, that's sure is shitty. Bye.
Well, it doesn't even imply that it's shitty because everybody sounds like they're very happy and the things
If that's
are
even them. If that's it, why wouldn't they at least show like a screen where they're all standing in Tasmania Village waving at you or something? Just fucking anything.
But are they in Tasmania Village? We don't know.
That's exactly. I don't. And so it's this fake like Evangelion style no ending.
Congratulations.
And it's infuriating.
It is very weird, and I took it very hard the first time I played it. I was not happy with that ending at all because I had finally gotten to the point where I really loved the world and the characters and everything about it, and I just wanted to learn more about it.
Blows it up.
And I didn't even necessarily want an ending. I just wanted more time in that world to just hang out and see stuff and talk to people. And instead, it's just like, no, we're good. Don't worry about us.
At least now I understand where they got the inspiration for the ending to the Dragon Quest movie. It suddenly makes sense,
right?
So the ending is weird existential bullshit.
Yeah.
And all of that said, at the end, I felt like I cheated myself, honestly. Because I barreled through 25 hours of the game. Trying to get to the end. I need my resolution. and for anyone that for some reason has listened this far and hasn't played the game, first of all, you fucked that up. But second of all, it's one of those things where I wish like nothing is resolved.
Yeah.
The game resolves literally nothing.
Well, you pulled the last needle.
And then the whole world blew up, and then I got a white text box that was like, "We're fine, bye."
Done.
And so it's this thing where I wish I had enjoyed more of the journey.
Yeah.
Because there was no resolution at the end.
So I have since found some interviews with Itoi about the ending, and all he'll say about it is, "I hope people find their own ending."
God damn it.
He really wanted to leave it as open as possible. People have asked him like, "Well, are Lucas and his friends okay?" And he says, "Well, they might be okay in your heart," and so, shit like that. And, he does not want to tell you what the ending is. I don't think he ever wrote one.
I do think no. I know. Obviously, he didn't write one. They would have put it in the game. I do think it's intentional, and I think. At least this is my interpretation of the ending, which is that the game really wants you to appreciate the journey you were on with the people you were on it with.
Right. And I think that the early chapters, as disjointed and awkward as they can be, do emphasize that, because replaying it this time, I actually enjoyed those chapters more than I did the first time, because it did give me more time to meet the characters and learn about the world and see exactly how things transitioned into what they would become. So I did have a greater appreciation for that on a replay.
And it does feel like the whole point of the game is that there's no resolution at the end of most stories.
Yeah.
The game's thesis seems to be enjoy the journey, because there is rarely a resolution at the end of it.
Just like in real life.
Just like in real life. And I like that message.
Yeah.
But fuck this ending. God damn it.
You know what pisses me off the most all these years after I finished the game the first time is we don't even get to see the fucking dragon.
I know. I can't wait. They show like the outline, and you're like, oh, it's going to sit up and be cool. And then they're like, we're fine. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Yup. Bodhi's here. He said he's fine. Bark, bark. You're like, what? What is happening?
Yeah.
So that's the story of Mother 3, and it's a ride.
Yes.
Let me tell you.
It is.
We're already so long in the tooth.
Yeah.
Let's just
real quickly, I just want to barrel through some of the references to the previous games in there. So In New Pork City, there's the theater that shows a collection of screenshots from Earthbound, which is really neat. And the localizers actually edited it in, so it was Western screenshots too. In the Empire Pork Building, you get a long hallway, which features a remix of the title screen music from Mother 1 and Earthbound Beginnings, which makes me choke up every fucking time I get to that point in the game. The boat ride immediately afterwards plays a remix of Pollyanna, which is a song that's in both Mother 1 and 2. And it shows a collection of items from Earthbound. And then it gives you a pencil eraser right next to a pencil that you can erase, which...
Like in Earthbound.
Yeah, which in Japan was a octopus eraser. So there's an octopus statue in the original version. Yeah. And then during the end credits, where you can't see the people and they just talk at you as if they are okay, somebody mentions that they had never seen Kumatora cry before. And I have seen some talk both in the Western and Japanese Earthbound community where they say that this might be a reference to the marketing slogan from Mother 1, which was no crying until the end. And we finally got to the end of the final game in the series and somebody is crying. So I guess we got there.
Reception sold 200,000 copies in its first week, achieving 468,000 copies sold by the end of the year. Famitsu scored it a 35 out of 40. RPG Gamer gave it a 9 out of 10. Yep. And Eurogamer gave it a 7 out of 10, saying that the mechanics felt antiquated. Character sprites are less detailed than the backgrounds. Although they did notice the game, or noted that the game was, quote, elegant in its simplicity.
Yeah.
Let's talk Legacy.
Yeah. So
before we get into final thoughts.
So Idoi has said outright he has no intentions to make any further games in the series and would like these 3 games to just stand on their own with their own strengths and weaknesses. Members of the fan community have started working on a game that they call Mother 4. I'm not okay with that. I don't really want a fan-based game to be a sequel to an existing franchise.
Why not just make it like inspired by kind of thing?
I'd rather that. Lucas did join Nessa in Smash Brothers Brawl in 2008, along with Rope Snake. And he was also a DLC character in Smash Brothers on 3DS and Wii U. New Pork City appeared as a stage in Brawl and in Ultimate. Porky appears as a boss in Brawl's Subspace Emissary, which totally fucking ruined the plot of Mother 3 for everybody here in the West who couldn't even get the fucking fan translation yet.
Yeah.
There are other references in the game, music, trophies, stickers, etc. in all the Smash Brothers games. The final 2 spirits to battle in the campaign mode of Smash Ultimate are Masked Man and Hinawa, which fucking ripped my goddamn heart out of my chest. Because I got to the one, because I was like, all right, let's see who these last 2 people are, and I get to it, and it's Masked Man. I'm like, I don't want to fight Klaus.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'll go fight the other one instead, and it's fucking Hinawa. And I'm like, why would you do this to me? It's fucking devastating. Anyway.
It is funny that Ness and Lucas, at least in the West, are kind of more Smash Brother characters.
Oh, you mean those guys from Smash Brothers?
Than they are Mother characters.
Yeah, like those guys, Marth and Roy from Smash Brothers. Wouldn't it be cool
those
if they
Smash
got
Brothers nights? Be great. As far as final thoughts, I do find the structure and pacing of Mother 3 to be frustrating. The game spends most of its 8 chapters just getting you settled into your party, and then chapter 7, it's like, hey, here's the game, and the game is really fun.
Yeah.
And it goes all the way up to this weird meta Evangelion style ending. And it's just, the whole thing is weird. Again, I get what it's going for. Right. I understand why it has no resolution. I understand why it's structured and paced in the way that it is. But I don't know that I agree with the idea being that they couldn't have achieved the same things in a better structured game. And I know that may fly in the face of what a lot of people love about the game, because I do think what makes it so memorable is how weird, and not only weird at just that regular Earthbound level where it's like weird characters and fart jokes and then people died and then I don't know what happens after we die and are we all okay? And that guy's a rope snake. And that weird mixture of like childhood imagery with full on like existential thoughts.
Right. Yeah.
I totally lost my train of thought. My point is that I get what it was going for,
Yeah.
and I think it achieves what it wanted to achieve very well.
Yes,
I don't know that I enjoyed every bit of it along the way,
it's fair.
but as a product, as a whole, I really did end up enjoying it. I do recommend it to anyone with a decent amount of patience for kind of weirdly paced and structured things.
And it does still have that NES style pacing of expecting you to grind from time to time.
I would add the caveat that I don't know that I would recommend the game for someone who is not following the guide for two reasons. One, the game can be obtuse. I don't think it ever quite gets quite as obtuse as Earthbound. There are a couple spots in Earthbound that it's like, what the fuck do I even do?
You go talk to
and
Orange Kid or Apple.
I
Kid.
never really knew. I never really felt like I didn't know what to do in Mother 3.
Right.
But there were points like battles and stuff where it was like, it felt like I needed to do very specific things.
But you were also rushing through at a pretty low level compared to...
I was level 60 by the end.
Well,
I hit level 60 in the last battle.
Cool.
So I do think I highly recommend the game with the guide.
Yeah.
Also because in addition to being very useful for a very weirdly structured game, the guide also adds, the same way the Earthbound guide added to Earthbound, it adds so much
of
flavor and texture to the experience.
Definitely.
I do think it's a great pairing.
I would say you don't necessarily need the guide if you are the kind of person who is used to 8-bit style JRPGs, where you expect to talk to every person and examine everything and walk back and forth until you find the right answer. It's playable. It is still sometimes obtuse, but nowhere near as much as 8-bit and some 16-bit RPGs. One thing I would say about it is going into it, I wasn't 100% sure what to expect because with Mother 1 and 2, they are both a little dry on story for a lot of the game. The story often takes a back seat to just the quirkiness and the randomness that it throws at you. There's always a story there, but it's not the main focus. And then with Mother 3, it is immediately the main focus, and it pours it at you pretty early on. And so I was taken a little off guard by that. I didn't expect to have a heavy story game thrown at me when I first played it. And going back to it again, now that I do know that it is a heavy story game, I actually appreciate it more for it. Again, it feels kind of like how Dragon Quest IV was, where it's multiple chapters building things up and then the end. Only it breaks the end up into another 3 or 4 chapters for some reason. But I still love it. I've always loved the game. It is one of those games that hits me right in the feels, and the older I get, the easier I get hit in the feels. So I am appreciating it more.
I do think it's one of those experiences that while I didn't love every second of the journey, I think I do very much appreciate the meta narrative of the game. Quite a bit. So it's weird. It's weird. I think my final thought is
it's weird.
I recommend it. It's weird. That I it's so hard to quantify. But I definitely would.
And
recommend.
I'm one of those people that spoilers don't ruin an experience for me, where sometimes having a whole thing spoiled out for me will actually make me more excited to go back and see exactly how all those things happen. And if you are that kind of person and you are listening to this and haven't played it yet, I definitely recommend going and play it. It's such a weird thing.
Us reading the story bullet points skips all of the charm and quirkiness and goofiness of the game as well, which is really kind of what drives it.
Yeah, and the brilliant humor of the localization too, which is just really great.
Wonderful job.
Yeah.
So that's Mother 3. Holy shit.
Yeah, that was a long episode.
That was a lot of Mother 3. We hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And we do have closure for this episode.
Yeah.
And it's that you should go support us at patreon.com/RetroWarriors. Oh, no! We're fine!
Everybody's okay here.
where you can get uncut episodes of the show. You can get our spin-off show, Talking Wizards, and you can get thanked on this portion of the show that we are now entering, because we would like to thank the following people.
That's
I swear to God, I picked these randomly. A huge Earthbound fan, excited to try it for the first time.
Nice.
I hope you got to it before you got to me saying this.
Amarlian,
Chris Courage, formerly known as Prince.
Dr. Jason Tharp,
Garrett Roberts,
our producer, Guy Johnson,
Jason Frudnick and his frog Fred,
Kevin Meyer,
Michael Winters,
and Nick M.
are all the wonderful patrons we want to thank for supporting this show. And thank you so much for listening to this very long episode.
Yeah. Man, I hope this was interesting.
Yeah, it feels really weird. Every now and then we do these episodes where we get to the end and it's like I feel like I've talked for so long but have said nothing.
Right?
I
feel
don't
like
even.
I skipped all the things.
This is like I know we're just at the end of the show and tired and tangential at this point. But when I watched the movie Brazil, I had to process it for almost an entire month to decide how I felt about it.
Sounds like Brazil, yeah.
I think like a month from now, I'm going to decide how I feel about Mother 3.
Well, I think the important part to take away is that Rope Snake was there.
Yeah, and was an important character in the plot.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.